All right. Welcome, everybody. It's so nice to have y'all here for this interview for the Writers Who Care blog. We're here today to talk about this lovely book called Telling the Story in the Data, Narrative Writing for Doctoral Students and Qualitative Researchers. And today we have three authors from the book, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, their names, and the institution where they work. So, Caroline, would you like to start first?
Sure. I'm Caroline Heller, and I was the director of the doctoral program, the individually designed doctoral program in educational studies at Lesley University in Cambridge, where I met all my co-authors of the book. And this past July, I retired from that position very happily, but I still work with my doctoral students. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Caroline. Rebecca, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Rebecca Redlin. I teach college writing and writing instruction at the University of Southern Maine in Portland and Gorham. And I co-direct the satellite site of the National Writing Project, the Southern Maine Writing Project.
Nice. Thank you, Rebecca. Garo, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm Garo Saradarian. I teach at MIT in the music department and the music or harmony department at Berklee College of Music, and Longy College of Music at Bard College, and in the transformative education program at Boston College.
Oh, you're busy, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, welcome. So I can't wait to talk about this book and hear about, why you wrote it, what's in it, the process y'all took to get it done. The first question I have for y'all is just to really, it's more of just an open description question. Tell us about the book. What's in it and what do you want readers to know about? And Caroline, did you want to start with this one?
Sure. Well, it is in some ways an ethnography of a class that I taught at Lesley University, a doctoral course on narrative writing for doctoral students. But it is also a book about writing instruction for doctoral students, told in the manner of, here's what we did in the class. When I introduced myself a moment ago, I let it be known that I recently retired, and in a way, I was kind of, I hope, wrongly concerned that there wouldn't be another professor at Lesley who was as interested in writing as I was. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I might be right about that. And so I felt that I had this tremendous opportunity with this group of students that Rebecca and Garo were part of. It was a particularly wonderful group of, I call them my classmates, really, because we were working together on writing. And that group coalesced so beautifully. And the combination of that and my realizing I was going to be retiring soon made me want to document the teaching of writing through this class. And I thought it was tremendously successful as a class and as a book. It both brings readers into the class itself, but within that venue, teaches the art of narrative writing for qualitative researchers. Each chapter beyond my introduction is written by one or two of the students, Rebecca and Garo, paired up on the last chapter. And I just think it's really beautifully done to not only get for readers to get my point of view as the instructor, but to get from each of the members of the class what they got out of it. Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. I love that you decided to take note of this last sort of teaching experience that you had with this group and use it as an opportunity to write about it. I think, we can all learn a lot from it. One of the things that I was really drawn to as a reader at the end, and just for people who are listening to this interview, or at the end of most of the chapters, you have this section on questions for further writerly contemplation. I'm curious, why did y'all decide to do that? And what does that do for a reader who is going through these chapters?
Garo or Rebecca, do you want to take on that one, or should I? I shall go for it. What we didn't want to do, Amy, was to offer like, okay, here you are, here's a book, now you can be a good writer of narrative, a good narrative writer. We really wanted to imply throughout that it's a difficult craft, excuse me, an essential craft, and the desire to become a writer and a better and better writer is not going to end at the end of the book, nor at the end of a class. It really, we intended it to serve as a very inviting invitation. And therefore we wanted to offer more resources and be strong in our implication that kind of you ain't seen nothing yet. Rebecca and Garo, do you want to add anything to that?
I would add only that our chapters are relatively brief, and oftentimes there was more information that we wanted to add that didn't have a place in the formal chapter itself. And so adding those questions at the end and offering some resources kind of helped scratch that itch, I guess, to get more information out to our audience.
I would just add too, I think throughout the whole process, we aim for this balance between, providing some rich philosophical ideas and theories and keeping that open-ended, but at the same time making it very practical too, so that this was a book that encouraged thought, and reflective thinking, but also was like, here's some things you can do right now, to address writing and the writing craft.
Yeah, I just really especially love, like one of the prompts, just to give, people who are interested in reading this an idea, like one of them is write a dialogue, real or imagined, for two people in which the conversational topic is superficial, hiding a more serious subtext. And so that is really, I love how this book allows the writer to write in these creative ways, but then also think about how that can be integrated into academic writing, and I think we need to do more of that. We don't do it enough. And so I think that this book can really speak to not only why that's important, but also how to go about doing that within your writing as an academic. So thank you all for that. I appreciate that. So our second question is, why did you write it? And I feel like, Caroline, you've talked a little bit about your why. So I'm curious about Rebecca or Garo, why did y'all write this book?
I wanted to be involved because I was invited, and I felt that it was a really unique and important opportunity, not just for me, but for perhaps my work going forward. I am deeply interested in narrative and narrative writing. Also, it was just a way to stay connected to this just amazing group of human beings who came to be a sort of family.
Yeah, to piggyback off the family angle, yeah, something I felt really magical happened in that class. I think it was the spring 2019, maybe. But yes, whenever it did happen, there was just, and it was documented in some of our ratings as well, is how we sort of came together um, as a group, as a group coming from a lot of very different places, um, both in our doctoral journey and just personal places. And so, yeah, the opportunity to be invited to continue that journey and to continue thinking about what that journey meant, and continues to mean, was a really important factor in me wanting to be part of this project.
Nice, I love that. So it also speaks this idea about how writing can bring us together and in community with each other, and in learning and developing together for sure. Man, it's not, I want to be in this class. Like this sounds really wonderful, beautiful experience. So right before the pandemic too, I guess, in 2020. Yeah.
And
Nice.
our fortitude was really tested because as we began the book, we met in a conference room at Leslie, and then we met on Zoom trying to achieve the same goals.
Yeah, I know that's hard. That is hard to produce the same energy that you get in that face-to-face space for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what y'all were just saying there kind of leads to our next question, which is all about, this writing process it was a collaborative process. And so I'm curious, what were y'all's experiences, writing collaboratively together? Like how did y'all do that? What was y'all's process?
Well, as I recall, we spent, I should have taken my notes out, my sort of archival notes for this interview, but we just moved not that long ago. They're somewhere. We spent quite a bit of those early times together figuring out how to structure the book. I think we came to the conclusion collectively that it would work well longitudinally. Like if we began at the beginning, if we really took people through the classes, and then we had to figure out, well, how would we do that? Who would cover which classes and why? So I think in my memory, we spent the first few sessions really playing with ideas for artwork and illustrations. And then the nitty gritty, once we decided on the chapters, Rebecca and Garo, do you want to talk about that? Let me preface what Garo and Rebecca might say with, as they talked about Rebecca and Garo earlier, we just had such a nice rapport and such a loving rapport, and yet it was incisive. We were not, we had developed the capacity to critique each other in a very productive way. And so we had a foundation to build on for writing together.
Yeah, I think for many of us, Garo, you can disagree with me or agree with me as you will. It was, for me anyway, it was an opportunity to write again with people I had already established strong writing relationships with. And interestingly, it was a unique opportunity to relive the class and to look back on it, as Caroline suggested earlier, through an ethnographic lens, which was very interesting indeed. And in, I think, in revisiting those classes, it just enriched the experience. And I hope that some of that richness comes forth in our chapters. And I think it does.
Yes, I agree, Rebecca. um, uh, yeah, I think, I mean, again, to return to the original class, we had again, it was a class where we had been, able to be vulnerable with each other in our writings and the content of our writings. Um, and so that just lent itself to, like Caroline mentioned, where, we felt free to critique each other in a supportive way. And I think what was wonderful was this idea too that even though we were offering these critiques, there was also space for each of us to be our own personality. As you see when you read the book, each book has its own, or each chapter has its own character. Um, and then going to Rebecca's point as well, that last chapter that Rebecca and I co-wrote, um, that was a great journey too. We sort of started out with a Google Doc and then just slapped whatever we had up there. Um, and then in the course of writing, again, it was interesting to see certain parts of that journey of that chapter. Um, Rebecca might take a part, I might take a part, and see where it goes, where the journey went. But by the end, there were some parts which I found fascinating that I couldn't tell who wrote which. There were some parts which I can, but some parts which I can't, which I think is really wonderful. And it was a great experience.
That is cool. And it is something, it can be harder and easier to write collaboratively together in one document. You learn a lot about yourself and about different writing styles, and trying to merge the voices can be really difficult. So, and then Caroline, you really served as the editor in putting all of these together. Am I right in that? And so what was that process like for you then?
Well, yes, you are right about that, Amy. And in that last sort of moment of putting, or many moments of putting the book together, Garo and Rebecca and I made it. We worked as a team. The other authors stepped aside because we realized, and that was a difficult decision, because we'd all been together, and I didn't want to leave anyone out, and every one of the co-authors, our authors, made such an important contribution. But in the end, we had to consider the cohesive voice. As Garo said, there was such uniqueness in each chapter, and yet we really wanted to have, to a certain extent, a unified voice. And so in the end, Rebecca, Garo, and I worked together to edit the chapter so that that unified voice would come out.
That is so hard, because you want to honor everybody's individual voices, but you also want the reader to feel like there is something consistent across it all. So
Exactly. Yeah.
so that's interesting that y'all did that together and worked on that process, because that's a whole other layer to putting all of this together.
Whole other layer. And I thought, and Rebecca and Garo weigh in, I thought somehow it ended up working really well for us to do that last part together. And students say more to each other than they probably say to me, but I didn't think anyone felt left out in the end. I think we all recognized the need for that cohesive voice, and that the group doing that needed to be a little smaller.
Yeah, and I think that attests to the trust that had been established. Everyone felt, that they were able to hand these drafts over to different people to be, and especially to you, Caroline, for that one final edit I know that you did of the whole book at the very end.
Nice, thank y'all. So I'm curious, going through that whole collaborative writing process and editing all of it together, what have you learned about yourself as a writer after this?
I think I've learned that I really need a writing community. I, for a long time, like many people, thought that writing was a solo journey. And intellectually, I knew that that probably wasn't true. But it wasn't, I have been in many writing groups over the years. This was the most intense and most fruitful of them, but And it's one of the reasons I joined the class in the first place. I was feeling a little isolated in my writing, and I felt like I could use that community. And so that's one of the reasons I signed up for the class in the first place, aside from the fact that Caroline is an amazing instructor, and I take advantage of her whenever I can, for sure. But yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway for me, is that I need a writing community, and if I have to make it myself, I will, but I'm happy to join other groups as well.
For me, there was that aspect as well, and also the aspect of I discovered I love to to, to write. Before then, the writing had been instrumental. It's write for this paper, write for that paper. Write for your PD courses, all that stuff. But this gave me a chance to really say, oh, okay, I actually enjoy just sitting down um, and writing something about anything, um, and thinking about how that writing is put together and what that writing conveys. So that was just a wonderful discovery that the class and Caroline enabled me to have, and that's something that is going to carry forward in any of my future writing.
And I would say that I think a lot of our classmates felt the same way, Garo. I think that class really provided many people with a sense of agency in terms of their writing.
Yeah, I
One
like how you mentioned agency because, oh, sorry, Caroline, were you gonna?
Oh, go for it, Garo.
Because it was I would think the first time, and I'm including starting from kindergarten in my education, where someone had actually said, well, just write about this, instead of write and here's the rubric, and you get 10 points for whatever. um, so yeah, it gave me some agency to say this is something, someone's actually asking me to just write um, about my experiences, right? And to care about that writing. So yeah, the agency was a big part.
One of the things that I discovered was how much I loved talking about writing and debating about whether a comma should be put in or not put in. And I so value the life of academia and the defense of one's method in our quest to understand things or to know things. But I much prefer those comma conversations to those method conversations, I have to confess.
Oh, I love all of this because really what y'all are conveying is like how important it is to be around people that can validate ideas or help you think of alternative ideas. And if you're alone, then you just drown in that and you need other people around you to help you with that. And oh my gosh, wow, what a gift to be able to from a class from you, Caroline, for students to say you invigorated a love of writing that I haven't had since kindergarten. I mean, wow, it says a lot about what's going on with writing instruction and how we need to open up more opportunities for our students to be able to write in ways that we just say write about an experience, and there's not a rubric to grade every little bit, right? Or even to engage in those conversations about should a comma go here or not, why or why not, to really think about the purpose of it as opposed to it's right or wrong. So lots of really great points to bring up here. I'm curious also if this whole experience has it impacted any of your teaching that y'all have been doing in the classes that you're teaching.
Certainly for me, I teach college writing to incoming first year students at a university. And in the past couple of years, I start the class with students writing me a letter about their reading and writing experiences. That's pretty standard, I think. Um, but I have been surprised at how honest students are and horrified at how they view reading and writing based on their experiences. And so not last year, 2 years ago, I decided that I was not scrapping my curriculum because I can't, and I wouldn't anyway. It's a great curriculum, but my perspective shifted a little bit, and my goal became to make them love writing again. And to me, that means narrative writing. I think the heart of any good writing is narrative writing, and if you haven't fallen in love with that, then you're not going to love any of it. Um, and so I spend a lot of time talking to students about finding their voice in their writing and centering themselves in their writing, whatever it is. If it's, and I think that most students have are accustomed to writing argumentative and persuasive pieces, and I'm all for standards, but I think that in many cases, the standards have been misinterpreted by districts or whomever, and they've run narrative writing out of the curriculum when I think that is what most young people crave and learn the most from, because it is exploratory in nature. And they learn how they think, and they learn why they think what they think. Um, and I could go on and on about this for days, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, it's been interesting for me because up until this fall, all my teaching was in music, right? So it's dealt with musical composition and theory and performance. But what was interesting is this fall I had an opportunity to take over a class that was wonderfully planned by a previous professor, um, called the Educational Conversation, and a series of the assignments were these educational autobiographies. So similar to what Rebecca mentioned, but not just on writing, just on, basically your experiences being educated. Um, and so that idea of addressing, one's own personal narrative and how to write that, and in addition, how to, as a instructor, to provide feedback to that. That's something that I never anticipated I would be doing, but because of this class, I definitely, I try to channel my inner Caroline, when approaching these writing tasks. I don't want to say tasks, but these writing opportunities, um, because it's, again, to go to Rebecca's point about narrative, it's amazing to hear the students write again about their personal experiences with education instead of trying to write about taking a position on an educational issue, or why this should be this and that should be that, and policy papers, but just to say, well, what was your experience with education? How can you convey the richness and the paradoxes of that, and how can you do that better? And I think that should be the place where these conversations start with, and often, again, to go off Rebecca, they start with these more abstract um, issues of, and prompts of, opinion papers and position papers.
Thank you for that. I know I always think about, going back to this overarching question, like, why do we write? And a lot of the times, a lot of the reasons why we write is because we want to make sense of ourselves and the world around us. And that does mean that we need that space and time to write about the experiences that we're going through so that we can reflect on it, and we can think about how is this impacting how we make sense of this thing that I'm teaching, or this thing that, this current event that's going on, or whatever. And it is so, so important for us to have space to do that in our lives, for sure. Are you still doing narrative writing on your own, or are you missing your group? I see nods of yes.
I'm missing the group, although I'm missing, although Rebecca's kept a writing group going that I hope to, right now I'm working on my dissertation. So I mean, I'm going to incorporate some of Caroline's, definitely, but I'm looking forward to post dissertation to getting back into other forms of writing.
No, most definitely. That is tough. Good luck. Good luck. And Rebecca, you are on a writing group and you're still doing some of this kind of writing?
I am, and I am trying to connect it to my doctoral work. So I am sneakily infusing my writing with narrative, um, even though that's not standard procedure.
I love that y'all are doing that and thinking about that. It's like that is one of the reasons I was so drawn to this book, is because it integrates that narrative writing along with the academic, and we sort of feel like we have to sneak it in, but here we are making an argument for how important it actually is. So
Absolutely. For me, it's interesting. I'm trying other forms of expression as a newly retired person. And so, for instance, I'm trying to I'm carving puppets, which I've never done before, but have always loved puppets. And the sense from writing of getting comfortable that you're forever a beginner has really infused my attitude toward doing, quasi-artistic things that a former part of me would say, you have no business doing this. You have no idea what you're doing. And I think from my experiences as a writer, I'm less inclined to say that to myself, because there's a great invitation in being a beginner and having to scratch out words and from writing and having to do a puppet face over again. It carries into other art forms.
yeah, it's constant persistence and revision, and maybe not always, not ever being quite satisfied with it, but being okay with that. So, and that is something that we have to help our students or, fellow colleagues understand, because it's hard. It's hard. It's not, always easy to do. So that community and that persistence and that purpose can help, push you through, and then you get this awesome project in the end, right? That other people benefit from. So who in the end is your intended audience? Like, who do you want to read this book?
Well, going back to the beginning, Amy, I really hope that my colleagues, other professors in doctoral programs, will feel more equipped to teach writing by reading this book if they didn't feel equipped prior. And then also as we all said, we're trying to give sort of a facsimile of the class to doctoral students as well. So if they don't have professors who feel comfortable teaching narrative writing, they have a book to go to that we hope really will be an excellent teacher for them.
Nice. So doc students, maybe teacher educators, and then maybe other people who are just sort of interested in narrative writing. Maybe even people who are interested in narrative writing, they want to integrate it into their academic writing. Okay.
Absolutely.
And finally, the last question here is, I'm wondering if y'all might want to share one or two excerpts with the audience so that they might get a little bit of a deeper peek into the book.
Rebecca and Garo, your chapters are so gorgeous. Do you have a favorite part of them that you'd like to read?
Sure, I'm just going to pull it up. Did you want to read part of your introduction, Caroline?
I will. I will just read. It's not the most gorgeously written excerpt, but it lends itself to your previous question. I want my students to have access within their doctoral program to the writing secrets I learned outside of formal doctoral education. I want them to experience the shimmer I felt writing my dissertation and have longed to feel in my writing efforts ever since.
I love that. I don't think many people can say that they felt a shimmer writing their dissertation. So I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you for reading that, Caroline. All right, Rebecca or Garo, y'all got to share something.
I can go while Garo is searching. I'm just going to read the last section in the chapter that I wrote. It refers back to the community aspect of the class. And so my chapter covered the fourth class, our fourth meeting together. Class 4 concluded with more of my classmates reading their optional assignments. This had already become one of my favorite elements of the course. I reveled in hearing my classmates read their work, and I was inevitably blown away by an insight, a turn of phrase, or an image that brought my imagination to its knees. Writing is such a personal endeavor. There is always the risk of our self-destructive comparisons or odious jealousy getting in the way of genuine appreciation of each other's work. By the time of this fourth class, however, the class had already fostered such a sense of fellowship that there was no room for such petty, albeit very human feelings to spring forth. Instead, we saw in each other's work new possibilities for our own, and we saw our own work through someone else's eyes, a gift indeed.
I love that. That's so honest. I love that you recognize some of that, the competitiveness that can come up in your brain when you are listening to each other's writing. But in the end, you come back to this goal of we're working together, we're helping each other. When you share, I learn from you. I'm not in competition with you. So that's very nice, very beautiful. Thank you, Rebecca. Garo, were you able to find your section?
Yes. I think I'll go to the beginning of my chapter that also sort of addresses the class. I think it is safe to say that the majority of PhD students in any field, even in the supposedly, quote, fuzzy social sciences, such as the broad field of education, are not often, if ever, asked to develop a sense for writing. We are trained in citation practices, methodologies, and data collection. We are asked to look at the facts outside of us and see if they correspond or correlate to some wider theoretical construct. But how we then write the story of our findings, and every discipline has its stories, is not considered important. Yet, beyond correct style and grammar or simply aesthetic niceties, the craft of good writing has a large role in determining what our research is. It, in effect, creates the meanings. What this book is about, and what I hope this chapter will introduce, is the idea that how we tell our research is as important as how we conduct our research, and that if we want our research to be meaningful, we must care about communicating that meaning to the reader.
Nice, beautiful. And that's so true. We're not just, chat GPT robots, right? That can spit out the facts. It's really about putting words together in ways that are going to be meaningful to our audience. Because in the end, even if you're writing narrative, it is an argument in a sense. You really are arguing a point or a way of doing something and trying to help others understand it. And so you've got to make those words powerful in the end to help convey your point. So. All right. Well, I've gone through all my questions. Is there anything else that you want the world out there to know about the book before we end the interview today?
I think it was implied throughout that it was an enormous act of love for us to try to build this book together, and we will love to have readers of this book and really appreciate, Amy, this chance to talk about it.
again, like I said, I was so excited to see this book, and I am definitely going to be using it with my doc students and in some of my future classes, and even for myself. I'm going to go to this book and use it to help my own writing too. So I definitely appreciate it. Gar, were you going to say one last thing?
No, just thank you for the opportunity to talk about this book and the journey of love that went into it.
All right, I'm going to stop recording. Okay.